we doing? Are we ready to roll? You let me know when we're live.
I will start it up now, Mr. Deputy Warden. Okay, we are live.
Thank you, and good morning again to everyone. Welcome to our council session. Our warden, I think, is still with us, but won't be able to be with us all day. He's a busy man doing some AMO things today, so you have second fiddle for now. To begin, I just want to say, if a fly lands on my head and stays there for about 5 minutes, would someone please tell me? I don't see many people laughing, which means you didn't watch the debates last night. But
well played.
So anyways, this meeting has been called to order. Madam Clerk, could we do the roll call, please?
Thank you, Deputy Warden Hicks. Councillor Mackey is running late. Councillor Gamble is not present at the time. Councillor Keaveney sends her regrets. Councillor Kentner is joining us on behalf of Councillor Keaveney, and all other council members are in attendance.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. We are on item number 3. Is there any declaration of interest? Seeing none, we'll proceed. If one does arise, I will ask you to declare it at that time. Number 4, adoption of the minutes. 4A, we're dealing with County Council and Committee of the Whole minutes dated September 24th. I have Councillor Potter moving and Councillor Patterson seconding. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, then I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. Item 4B, that's the Long-Term Care Committee of Management minutes, which are dated September 22nd. That is moved by Councillor Burley and seconded by Councillor Mackey. We'll have to have someone else because Councillor Mackey is not here as yet. Correct, Madam Clerk?
Correct. I see Councillor Robinson's hand.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Robinson. Is there any discussion on those minutes? Then I have a
question, Mr.
Yes.
Warden, or Mr. Deputy Warden, rather.
Councillor Milne?
Kim, I'm just wondering, you gave a verbal update on the redevelopment in Durham in that report. Were there any timelines discussed, like when things might happen or not happen? I think you're on mute, Kim.
You know, if we do this long enough, I may yet get it right. Thank you for
There
the
we
question. Through you, Mr. Deputy.
To hear your voice.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Warden. Council, we took possession of the property on September the 17th. We have a meeting with the province on Monday, or no, Tuesday, to talk about next steps in the redevelopment. At this time, we're still awaiting both confirmation of the construction funding as well as the licensing of the new facility, which will come later in the process. The Committee of Management had provided support to staff to go ahead and look for some consulting resources to help us put together the vision and the supporting business case around a housing model for the property. So in this last couple of weeks, we've been talking to some experts in that field to give us a proposal so that we can bring back and discuss with all of you, so that we have the right, I think, background numbers and an understanding of market feasibilities, et cetera, so that we can move forward. Overall, what needs to happen, we need to understand the housing model and the additional uses on the site so that we can kind of develop an overall site plan. With an overall site plan, then Randy and his team can do the D6 study. We can do stormwater management. We can think about a master servicing plan, etc. So it's just kind of getting all the pieces in order. And I think, that's really what will be keeping us busy over the next 6 months.
Thank you. Might I have a follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Please.
Kim, so I wonder, is the intention for the Committee of Management to stick handle, so to speak, this entire project, or will there be consideration given to a building committee or development committee to actually steer this project through?
I think our intent was to bring a staff report back at our next council meeting to talk about the proposal from the consultants around developing that. And I think that's a very worthwhile discussion, because the work that we're doing right now is much broader than the long-term care facility specifically. That specific work will come later in the process. So I think we can have a good discussion about that at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Mr. Deputy Warden, I just will note that Councillor Mackey has joined us.
Excellent. Welcome, Councillor Mackey. All right, I think we're ready to call the question on item 4B, Long-Term Care Committee Management Minutes dated September 22nd. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, I will say that that's carried. We're moving on to item 4C, CAO Performance Evaluation Committee Minutes dated September 24th. That is moved by Councillor Milne and seconded by Councillor Desai. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, is there anyone opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Next, item D, 4D, Committee of the Whole, closed meeting minutes dated September 24th, and the Long-Term Care Committee of Management closed meeting minutes, which are dated September 22nd. That is moved by Councillor Woodbury and seconded by Councillor Potter. Any discussion on those two sets of minutes? Seeing none, I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? That too is carried. Okay, we're moving along. We're on item number 5 now, close meeting matters. We have none.
Correct.
We can move on to item number 6, reports, the Board of Health minutes, which are dated August 28th, 2020, and September board report. Dr. Era is with us, I believe.
Correct. Mr. Warden, good morning. Mr. Warden, good morning, Council.
Good morning.
Mr. Chair, sorry. I don't know if you need a motion to put me on the floor, or I can proceed.
Yes, I apologize. Item 6, we're going to have the Board of Health minutes moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Milne. You have the floor now, Dr. Era.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So in terms of updates from the last board report, the main item was the school reopening, and there are different ways to address the different parts of it. It's a complex subject, but instead of starting with the issues that we ironed out, probably I will start with the good news. At the time, we had 90% of the kids in the school, and the description that I received from Director of Education and Directors of Education and school principals that they're happy kids. So 90% of the families in Grey Bruce are well served by the school system. Today, to just keep the update on the same subject, we have absenteeism rate around 5%. So that's an improvement from that point of view. And there are many issues that were related to school reopening, whether it's some shortage of hand sanitizer or PPEs, miscommunication or less than optimal communication related to the guidelines, just because they're changing and they're coming from different parts, whether it's from the province or different ministries, sorry, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, and local public health. However, all in all, the process have been corrected. All these challenges are being addressed or have been addressed. And we found that there was some anxiety related to testing and the access to testing in Grey Bruce. That was the main source of anxiety to families, to parents. And it comes from two distinct sources, to the best of our assessment. One was the raising anxiety related to the raising numbers in the province, and that was addressed with communication or multiple communications. The second one was related to the application of the screening tool. So the screening tool is sound scientifically and came from the province to everybody. However, the application of it has been or was stringent at the time. So there were a couple of things to correct, whether communication or introducing electronic screening tool. So that was corrected. We were left with another variable, which is access to testing in Grey Bruce. And we've been working with the hospital CEOs and the physician leaders in assessment centers. Last week, the issue was had a trend of positive correction. And that was last week, and I can give the exact numbers where the issues were. This week, I presume, or I project the assessment, the survey that we're gonna run or currently running is gonna result in access to testing within 24 hours to almost all families in Grey Bruce. The survey, and I will circulate to the CEO to circulate to the group after, from last week indicated that 80% of the families were tested. 10 had to go to a different site, some of it outside of Grey Bruce, and 10%, the other 10%, just simply gave up on testing and went the isolation route to isolate their kids for 14 days, which was very, we did not meet the health need of the community, I believe, as a system. It's worth mentioning that assessment centers are not under public health guidance. However, we work with the hospitals to ensure that that service is corrected. The solution, and I apologize for laboring the subject, it's just not a simple, straightforward one. The solution has been implemented in the past 10 days, which is increase the number of hours per day and increase the number of days per week, including the weekends. And all assessment centers just very recently went to testing over the weekend. And I do believe this week result is going to be very positive, and that will be correction for it. So that's the main item from the board meeting, Mr. Chair. If there is time, I would like to update the council on 3 quick items that happened since then.
Perhaps first,
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Mr. Chair.
my apologies. I was just asking if council had any questions.
Councillor Desai has his hand up.
Councillor Desai?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. Quick question for you to Dr. Era. We are noticing an increase in the number of cases, but hand in hand, we've also noticed an increased amount of testing. Is there any relevance in the number of positive tests as a percentage of the total number of tests? Is that a relevant number at all? Or should we be, in fact, rolling back to previous phases, provincially as well as locally, just because of the increased number of cases?
That's an excellent question, and definitely there is a connection or a relevance between the number of tests conducted and the number of cases, and that might give some reassurance that the numbers that we're seeing right now comparing to the spring might not be much different, if could be lower relatively in numbers. However, there are other metrics that we look at. One of them is the shape of the curve, the doubling time. And regardless of the number of tests that are conducted, if we see that there is exponential increase, that's what really matters. So although in the numbers, if we go to the 3,000 tests per day in April, we might not see 600 cases in Ontario, we might see 200. However, doubling from 80 to cases a few weeks ago to 600 right now is very equivalent to doubling from 20 to 200 if we go to the other metric. So it is still concerning, and specifically the doubling time being shortened and the exponential increase in cases, regardless of the absolute number.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I don't have any, well, actually, I do have one further question. Are we looking locally? I know provincially, the Premier made the announcement that we're eliminating the 10-person bubble and we're going back to single household bubbles only. Are we looking at doing are we looking locally to go back to previous phases ourselves?
But currently, we're not looking at going back to previous phases. There has been a discussion provincially that is it needed or not, and universally MOHs would say at this point, probably it's not needed. We have experience with the management of this outbreak from the past 7 months that would say we can control it without going to the extreme measures. Nevertheless, if the situation changes in the coming 3-4 weeks, we might see the possibility going back to stage 2. However, I don't believe this is a situation, especially for us in Grey Bruce.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I don't see any other hands, so maybe I'll ask Dr. Era to proceed. You mentioned there are a few other issues you wish to update us on.
Certainly, the mask mandate, it has 2 sub-items. The first one was the direction from council to staff and the health unit to collaborate on drafting a mask bylaw. And I know firsthand a lot of effort went into that process from the legal team and from the staff. And we managed to iron out most of the wrinkles. The one challenge that was somehow prohibitive or practically prohibitive was not related to enforcement, like most of us presumed early on. It was related to exemptions, and more specifically, if we include an exemption process, there's always the risk of a challenge to the decision, which would entail legal risk to the county and the health unit, and workload risk. Whether an exemption was granted or not, there is potential for what I understand from our legal judicial review, which is a lengthy process that might cost time-wise and dollar-wise. It was not an easy challenge to overcome. So at the time, we decided to hold that process and keep the draft for later if it is needed. Nevertheless, as you know, last week we had the announcement from the province that an order from the province to mandate masks is in place. It's worth mentioning that there was a solution, whether it's continuing with the MOH order or a letter of instruction, which is another legal vehicle to mandate masks. Regarding the provincial mandating mask, it's in general very similar to the rules that we had in the Section 22 MOH order. There are a few exceptions. One of them is the word shall be mandated, or a person shall use the mask instead of best effort. And some other exemptions related to churches, hospitals are not existent in this new order. Nevertheless, practically to a citizen, they're quite comparable, and there isn't much difference for our citizens to follow or residents. So that's the 2 items on the mask. There was a community cluster identified in East Grey, and I am confident the team of contact tracers have managed to follow everybody who has been identified as a high risk and low risk. And we have seen conversion from some of these individuals to cases over the past weeks. It's coming to an end that cluster is contained, and we're hoping for the best, preparing for the worst, but I suspect it wouldn't be many cases if it's related to it going forward. Nevertheless, it was a wake-up call to some people that we're not out of the woods yet, and we cannot let our guards down. That's my update, Mr. Chair. Open to questions as always.
Of course, are there any questions from council members?
You see Councillor Soever?
Thank you, Councillor Soever.
Yes, so the provincial order is very hard on the business owner in that it says the person responsible for a business or organization that is open shall ensure that any person in the indoor area of the premises. So that's puts I think your order was, that you have to encourage, but this says shall ensure. So some of our businesses have been concerned that this is making it very difficult for them. And so they've asked that we put our own bylaw in place, which would not be inconsistent with this, but might, put some responsibility on the person entering the thing. Now, I recognize that may expose us to some legal risk, but I'm sure that there will be a case that goes to the Supreme Court before long on the rights issue of wearing a mask versus protecting the health of the community at large. And I would hope that maybe somebody would take that there sooner than later, but I don't see a huge risk to the individual municipality, because I do believe that there is some jurisprudence, particularly related to the Quarantine Act, that has already stated. So there is some precedent that states the safety of the community is paramount. So what would you recommend for owners of businesses if somebody says they won't wear a mask?
So
When
Dr.
they
Arrow?
have the responsibility that they shall ensure.
So I should again emphasize I'm not in any way qualified legal counsel to mention what should be done or not. But from science point of view, from risk point of view, we see optimal compliance in the public in Grey and Bruce. Over 85, could be 90% of people are using masks. And from that point of view, if 10% did not, that would not change the equation much. The interpretation of the regulations from the province, my understanding, and we provide this interpretation, it is rightly so, like you said, it's on the business owner to ensure this happens. That might entail not allowing a person to go into the facility or asking them to leave if they remove their mask. What can they do or not do? Truly, I don't feel I'm qualified to provide advice on that one.
Mr. Deputy Warden, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me. There is some construction going on in my area here, so I did put it on mute. Any other questions, Madam Clerk? Do you see anyone's? I don't see any other hands.
No, sir, I don't see any more.
Okay, then. Dr. Arrow, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're a very busy man, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. That's very thoughtful of you. Thank you.
Okay, Council, I'll call the question. Any opposed to the motion? Seeing none, I'll say that is carried. We are now on to item number 7, which is a delegation. And Rob, do we have our guests queued up?
We do, Mr. Chair. I'm just inviting them into the meeting.
Excellent.
And we do have one phoning in this morning, I do believe.
Is that Councillor Chigano?
No.
Chief
He is
Anaquat?
not able to join us.
Chief Anaquat here.
Or, sorry, he is on video with us today.
So-
I'm on the audio. My internet is down.
Excellent. So is that Chief Anaquat?
Yes, it is.
Excellent. Thank you for being with us here today. I have a big smile on my face for you guys being here today, by the way. And Rob, do we also have Councillor Anthony Chigano?
No, this is Sydney Nadwan, Councillor Sydney Nadwan from the Chippewas and Awash, taking the place of Anthony Chigano.
Okay, thank you. So I want to welcome you folks here today. I'm smiling, a great big smile if you can't see me. This is a very, very good day, very exciting day. And I'm going to turn the floor over to you. I don't know who's going to go first. Is it you, Chief Anaquat?
Well, I can start. I'd just like to acknowledge the settlement offer from Grey County, and I believe that in the spirit of cooperation, we're moving forward, and I'm quite excited about the proposal, and just looking forward to working collaboratively in the future.
Excellent. Thank you for your remarks. And Councillor Najawan?
Yes, I would like to say that this is a historical event, and in cooperation and reconciliation, trying to keep together the relationships with our neighbors, and that we are satisfied that this kind of simplifies and expedites this whole process that we've all been in for a very long time.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Najawan. I just want to say that this is a historical event, and I agree with you. And it's been a long time coming, and it's here. So this is a day for us all to celebrate and to form as a basis for us to move forward. I can recall a year ago or so, I was invited and welcomed to attend, and I did go to the court process on 2 different occasions. I attended the sunrise ceremonies very early in the morning, and what a gift it was to hear from your elders and to receive that historical information that's important for all of us to have. And what a gift it was as well to have the opportunity to interact with your lawyers, great group of people, and the education that they gave me and gave everyone, in fact, as well. You folks will be familiar with the map that was prominently displayed during the court process, and that almost like a comic book booklet and a summary provided by your lawyers, which told the story, which is part of that whole truth-telling. All of that information was very revealing for me personally and very educational, and it has brought us to where we are at today. So I want to thank you for having us. I did have the chance to attend. I know that there you have a housing project that was on the go with, what's the housing group that builds Habitat for Humanity? Yes. So I did get a chance to attend for a day and dirty my hands up a bit. Anyways, it's just been an absolute joy and privilege to interact with you. And I'm hoping that we have the basis now to move forward and address some of the other issues that are facing our people. Any other comments that you wish to make, Chief Anaquat or Mr. Najawan?
I appreciate your sentiments regarding our elders. They're one of our most key influential people in our communities, helping us with our decision-making process. We hold our elders in high esteem with their knowledge and their traditional cultural maintenance. So I'm glad that you enjoyed your visit with us, and I'm glad that you took some of the culture away with you. So it's the makings of a positive relationship.
Thank you. I'll invite any councillors, any comments from any councillors? Madam Clerk, I see no hands. Thank you again for your time, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you. Have a good day.
Good day. I should say miigwech. All right, we're on to item number 8, our 2 bylaws. They are moved by Councillor O'Leary and seconded by Councillor Carlton. Do we have any comments or discussion on these bylaws? Seeing none, then I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed? That is carried. I'm very, very happy to say that. Carried, indeed, yes. Okay, we are on to, as if we haven't had good news already, we're transitioning quite nicely into item number 9, good news and celebrations. And we're going to start off in the great municipality of Chatsworth. Councillor Mackey.
Thanks, Deputy Warden. Good morning, County Council. The good news, our arenas are scheduled to be open. The ice is actually going in right now, so hopefully it's all for naught. With the way things are changing, I'm hoping that we're not spending a lot of hydro dollars and then having to close them down again. But as I speak right now, all of the user groups are hoping to go ahead and are looking forward to ice time. Unfortunately, we had planned on meeting on Wednesday, yesterday, in person for our first in-person council meeting. But, based on the provincial case numbers, we decided to go back to virtual, and we will continue to monitor the situation. Other than that, everything seems to be going along well in the municipality of Chatsworth. Thank you, Mr. Warden, or Deputy Warden.
Thank you. Councillor Gamble, anything to add?
Councillor Gamble is not with us today.
Oh, I guess nothing to add. We're going to move on to Georgian Bluffs. Councillor Burley.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. We're still living the dream in Georgian Bluffs. We've been blessed with beautiful fall colors throughout our municipality, and we look forward to have all county councillors come to Georgian Bluffs and really enjoy it. Nothing really to report. We're just moving ahead and enjoying life. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Carlton, anything to add?
No, thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. I have nothing to add today.
Thank you.
The airport.
The airport's just flying. All right, next. Grey Highlands. Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. We are looking at opening up the Flesherton Arena. The ice has gone in, and I believe we're opening it up this coming week at some point. I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head. We are going to be hosting some community members who play on the hockey team from Dundalk, because clearly Southgate couldn't get their actions together. Councillor Milne, I'm looking at you. Grey Highlands staff is looking at moving to a hybrid version of council on or around the first meeting in November, which would be the first Wednesday in November. And we had last Friday, I think, or the Friday before that. It was the day when we had, 2 Hanover Owen Sound Task Force meetings ago. We had the Eco Refillery grand opening, and I can't remember if I'd mentioned that in council yet. And tomorrow we're having the reopening of sorts of Susan's Deli in Markdale. And it's great because Susan's Deli has been sort of a mainstay in downtown Markdale for a while, and it had closed down. And the new owner who has taken it over, her name is Susie as well. So they've kept the name, and they've kept a lot of the things inside quite the same. I've been in there already, and they've got Portuguese custard tarts to die for. So highly recommended. That's opening the grand opening ceremony is tomorrow. Other than that, Mr. Deputy Warden, I don't think I have anything further to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desai. To sunny Hanover now, and Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Good morning, County Council. Things are good in Hanover, and the sun is still shining. That's it.
Very brief. Good. Meaford, Councillor Clumpus.
Thank you. very much, Mr. Deputy Warden, and good morning, County Council. Just two quick updates. Our virtual MIF begins tonight, actually, with the Meaford Culture Foundation. 4 films that have been award nominated films, and you won't find them on Netflix, I'm told. And they're trying this virtually this year. We certainly missed them over the long holiday weekend in September, but they're going to give it a go over Thanksgiving weekend. The other big news for us, and we're all very excited about this, is a sort of soft grand opening for our new library on Saturday, October the 24th. So very happy to be in attendance at that one. Other than that, it has been an unsettling week for us here in Meaford, as you've all heard, but our numbers are going up, which is causing some concern. Other than that, all's good. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep the construction noise in the background to a minimum. Councillor Kettner, anything to add?
You're on mute, Councillor Kettner. There you go.
Really like to add to Mayor Clumpus's comments, and maybe you've reported this in the past, Barb, but amazing that we have raised, I think it's over $800,000 locally in support of the new library. So I think their fundraising goal was $750,000, and a lot of naysayers said that couldn't be done, but in fact, they went right over the top. And I'm hearing amazing comments about this amazing building. It got off, you know, it was an old grocery store, but believe me, it's going to be talked about in future as a really amazing piece of architecture and parkland right in the heart of Meaford.
That is good news, Councillor Kettner. Thank you. Same thing happened, by the way, in Hanover when we were beginning fundraising for the P&H Center, and the consultants told us we didn't have the capacity to raise those kind of funds, but we went ahead and did it anyways. So bravo to you folks and the citizens of Meaford. Moving on now to Owen Sound, Councillor Boddy.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. 4 quick things. We've got some great coverage on the Toronto Star in the last 10 days. They had a great write-up on a Indigenous artist named Emily Kiwashig that's on at the Tom Thompson Art Gallery. She's from the Saugeen First Nation, young woman, really good artist. So it was nice to get that write-up. We, of course, probably all know that Star gave us a write-up on Dr. Era and our COVID numbers up here and the efforts we've been making, which is good advertising in the long run. We hope it doesn't mean that people think they can, it doesn't become too inviting. I know Alar is going to kill me for that, but it's Thanksgiving weekend, which means the fish are jumping in the Sydenham River, so that's always good. Go to the Mill Dam. We've got concerts every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 12 until 2 at our renewed farmers market. If you go to musicatthemarket.ca, you can find out who's playing. Come by lunch downtown and enjoy the concert. Last bit of good news, about 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago, the building department gave out 4 building permits that totaled $42 million. Last year, our total January 1st to September 30th was 27 million. We've more than doubled that in Owen Sound at 43 million. So it's nice to see some development coming in, and it helps us maybe bite back a little bit of our share at the Grey County level, which we're looking forward to doing. So that's our news.
Wow, that is good news, Councillor Boddy. Councillor O'Leary, anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. Good morning, County Council. Nothing more to add. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on now to Southgate and Councillor Woodbury.
Good morning, everyone. Southgate, everything's going great down here. We're running out of industrial land. We've got so much interest in that. We've got a lot of things, the building, the going. It's just an exciting time with development and businesses that around the area. And Councillor Milne has a new daughter-in-law, so that's just made the whole world a better place for us. So everyone have a great day with it.
Thank you. Good transition to you, Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, or Deputy Warden, rather. Yeah, I'm only ever going to have one daughter-in-law, and I got a good one. So other than that, everything's great in Southgate. Mr. Councillor Desai can well, I hope he has a nice day. That's all.
As always, as always. Moving on to the town of the Blue Mountains, Councillor Soever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. Yes, we've got a lot going on here. The Blue Mountain Village Association golf tournament, they managed to run it this year appropriately, socially distanced. It raised $46,000 for the Blue Mountain Village Foundation, and the Blue Mountain Village Foundation has announced that they're gonna have a spring and fall grant program and a spring grant program, with the grants targeted toward organizations that need some relief due to COVID. So that is good news. Also the seniors, the Blue Mountain Village Association announced their Senior Center Without Walls program. This is a new initiative. It's a free telephone-based activity and information program, which is available to seniors who have access to a phone, but not a computer or internet. It was inspired by the Seniors Without Walls program that serves several parts of the province. And this is designed to address the isolation that is imposed by COVID-19 restrictions. And it's a way to keep the seniors connected and active in the community. So what happens is there's group phone calls led by volunteer facilitators and guest presenters. And this helps the seniors stay in touch. And the weekly programs will include educational, health, wellness sessions, and fun and relaxation activities on the phone from the comfort and safety of people's homes. So this is a great new program that's being run by our BVO. So if you know of any seniors that are lonely and in the community, or even in the rest of Grey County, please let them know about this program run by our BVO. And you can find more details out on the BVO website. Also, good news is that the South Georgian Bay Small Business Enterprise Center, which serves Collingwood, the town of Blue Mountains, Meaford, Clearview, Wazaga Beach, and other communities, received a grant of $75,000 from FedDev Ontario for their digital Main Street program, which helps local businesses increase their online presence. And so they have a digital service squad, and a large number of businesses have already taken advantage of this program in its previous funding cycle. And we're very happy that it was funded again, because we're in this for the long haul, and the more of a digital presence businesses can have, the better they'll do. And that's all I have. I don't know if Deputy Mayor Potter has something.
Councillor Potter?
Yes, thank you. I just, last week we learned that our a local business, Bruce Street Technologies, had applied under the provincial ICON program to extend rural broadband. They are working in partnership with some local apple growers who are planning an irrigation project. This will deliver irrigation to a lot of the new apple farms, which need more water than some of the older ones. But it also will extend fiber optic cable broadband. And this is just the beginning of what we hope will be a project that will eventually serve the whole town with the rural broadband at the standard. So we are not involved in terms of any funding for this at this point, but we are a supporter and a partner in the project. So we're very happy to see this going ahead.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor Potter, and thank you, Councillor Soever. We move now to West Grey. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Deputy Warden, and good morning, County Council. I'm excited to announce that Grey County Transit GTR Route 6, which is Grey Road 4 from Flesherton to Walkerton, was launched on October 5th. There was an inaugural transit ride with Warden McQueen, Mayor Sue Patterson, and also Mayor Peabody, who is the mayor of Brockton, and Adam McKechnie, who is the driver's seat owner, as well as myself. So certainly get the word out that transit is available for Grey County residents. Also, West Grey is hosting a drive-through Halloween party on October 31st, 2 to 4 p.m. at the Durham Arena parking lot. This is a free event. Please register. Check out our West Grey website or contact Cody Hewitt, who's the recreation supervisor. One other point of significance is that West Grey Council and Grey Highlands Council had a joint council meeting with regard to the RED funding and a really exciting initiative with regard to social enterprise. This is also, I must say, Fire Prevention Week, and the theme is Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen. Thank you, Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Hutchinson, anything to add?
Good morning, Mr. Deputy Warden. No, I think Mayor Robinson has covered all the points. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you all. There's a lot happening in our county. Good news for sure. I would be remiss if I did not give a shout out to our county staff. Approximately a week ago, there was an event in Hanover where there was a fire, and it potentially had an impact on many of our poor and vulnerable, disenfranchised individuals. And in a very short period of time, with just one phone call, it was really impressive to see the supports come flowing into Hanover from the county to support those individuals. So I just want to put a word out to those folks saying thank you very much. And I was so proud to be able to say, yes, there's our county at work. That's in particular our social services staff and our housing staff. Thank you very, very much. Okay. We are going to move on to item number 10 now, which is our adjournment. Moved by Councillor Burley and seconded by Councillor Hutchison that we adjourn. Any opposed? I'm gathering not. Thank you. All right. Does anyone need a break, or can we push on? I don't see any hands. We can move on. Thank you. Let me just get my...
Larry has a tea time. He doesn't want to see us stop. We got to keep going.
All right. So I'm going to call Committee of the Whole to order. Is there any declaration of interest? Seeing none, we will proceed. Item number 3, looking at the consent agenda. Is there anything in the consent agenda that needs to be pulled?
Councillor Klumpus.
Councillor Klumpus?
You're on mute, Councillor Klumpus.
Thank you very much. I would like to pull item H, I think it is, correspondence from the town of Blue Mountains.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Then it is moved by Councillor Woodbury and seconded by Councillor O'Leary that we approve the consent, the items in the consent agenda. Any opposed? That is indeed carried. Thank you very much. All right, so we're on to items for direction and discussion. Item number 5A, budget assumptions and timelines. This will be moved by Councillor Carlton and seconded by Councillor Woodbury. Kevin Weckler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Deputy Warden, and good morning, Council. I'll kind of walk through some of the highlights of this report. So this report outlines the the proposed high-level budget assumptions for council's consideration and direction for the 2021 draft budget. A corporate budget overview and background will be presented on November 26, 2020, and this will provide further information to council on the overall 2021 budget and the funding requirements. And then what's being proposed here is that a committee of the whole, a budget review meeting day similar to last year will be held on January 29th, 2021. And then if everything goes well, we would present a revenue and expenditures budget bylaw then on February 11th on 2021 for council's adoption. I'm going to highlight some of the general assumptions and then the COVID assumptions that staff are proposing to build into the budget. So under general assumptions, we're going to based on historical trends, our annual assessment growth. We'll use an estimated 1.4% growth. That's based on the previous 5-year average. We'll look at that, and we'll look at when the impact returns to roll. We'll adjust that for our starting position. We'll start it with the average. Supplementary taxation to be estimated based on historical trends and impacts preliminary new assessment forecast that they provide, net of any write-offs based on historical. Insurance costs, we're increasing by 2% for 2021. I've reached out to our provider on this and we're waiting for information back. I have some concerns about insurance, what we're hearing in the market. But that is where we're starting right now. But so that number could change once I hear more. But that's what we're building, what we've recommended to staff currently. Utility costs will be projected based on the industry projections and as well LAS AMO's business services commodity cost projections. We use LAS's natural gas and electricity bulk procurement processes, so we'll look to them for help with that. Gas and diesel, will projected cost reductions here based on the current market conditions and the concurrent consumption levels. Salaries and benefits are to be budgeted based on current negotiated contracts. The non-union and the council compensation to be based on the compensation formulas that council's approved and or the current union negotiated contracts. Provincial funding to be assumed to continue at the current known and committed levels, including any announced funding increases and decreases. Costs of providing provincially mandated services are to be based on ministry regulations and guidelines and will be adjusted to reflect any base funding annual adjustments. We're continuing the recommendation to include in the 2016 asset management plan, where the recommendation was to increase tax revenues by 1% each year for the next 15 years, solely for the purpose of phasing in full funding for our tax funded asset classes. That was covered in our asset management plan. An updated asset management plan is required under the regulation to come to council by July 1st, 2021. So staff is currently working on that. So you should see that in 2021, an updated asset management plan. As well, our assumption, we're going to continue to use our building condition assessments and our reserve fund analysis as a tool to provide for maintenance and replacement costs in the budget for our assets. The healthcare initiative funding will continue to transfer to reserve that 0.5% of the county levy for a contribution for capital construction projects of hospitals. In regards to COVID assumptions, long-term care staffing levels will be budgeted to continue based on the current ministry directives or any new directives we receive and regulations prior to the budget. Personal protective equipment to remain at the current levels and project to continue through 2021. The municipal operating funding, phase 1 funding of $3 million that we received to support our 2020 COVID-19 operating costs and pressures that were received in August. That will be used to offset any COVID-related impacts in 2020, and what's left we will show as a transfer to reserve, and then we'll bring that back and utilize that funding to offset the costs in the 2021 budget. Training, conferences, and travel expenses for 2021 to be reflective of the reduction of these costs based on the increased use of video conferencing. Investment income to remain low. Reduction in the investment income will reduce the transfer to the one-time funding reserve, whereas per the policy, any revenue that is budgeted that exceeds 1% of the levy is to be placed in the one-time funding reserve for non-recurring expenditures. And the staff will continue to monitor budget assumptions based on the most current information we got. So if we receive new information from the ministry or changes happen, we'll adjust the budgets based on the best known information we have. There's a list of departmental specific assumptions. I wasn't going to go into that this morning, but if there's questions on that, I can try to answer those. On the budget timelines, as I stated, we had hoped to maybe come back to having this budget reviewed by council in December, but due to the impact of COVID and the effects this pandemic's had on the services and staff time, we're proposing that the budget review day be on January 29th, and then hopefully come back with a budget bylaw in February. Budget development, there's a section in the report that describes how we build the budget, how it's reviewed, how the assumptions are established and the timelines. And then as well, the layout of the budget document, staff are not proposing any major changes to these budget presentations. So it'll be similar to the 2021. Maybe some formatting and some possible changes to the breakdown of the functions. We'd broken the functions down into like 4 major functions. We maybe break out long-term care, for example, and paramedic services to be on their own when they're such significant services, and significant budget impacts. So, and then attached of this is the last year's 2020 budget summary and 2020 budget details report, just for your information on what those were, and as well as the budget timeline, which, like I said, builds towards bringing a report in the end of November of what the budget is looking like, and as well then having this budgeted, the 2021 draft budgeted, provided to council in early January, and then our committee of the whole budget session on January 29th. So that is my report, and if you can try to answer any questions. Or
Thank you, Kevin. Council, any questions?
Councillor Body.
Go ahead, Councillor Body.
Thanks. A question for Kevin. I note that you're assuming a 2% increase for insurance. Are we at a renewal stage? Owen Sound just renewed, and it's a 30% increase that we're getting spanked with, which we're probably all going to get hit with. And where are we at in the process of the county?
Kevin?
Yes, we went out to market last year, and that we moved away from Frank Cowens, who's now intact, and so we've moved to Marsh. So I have reached out to there to provide us with an update on this early. So I haven't got that back, Councillor Body, yet. So I'm in a dialogue with them, but I'm hearing similar concerns that you're raising here. I was on a Ministry of Long-Term Care funding meeting yesterday, and a representative from Larnach County said their insurance is going up 25%. So this is flagged right now. Just, I guess, for our initial assumptions, we've thrown this number out, but I will update this based on the information I get. And then I'll bring that back to council too for direction then if for where you want to go with it, if you want to go back out to market or whatever. But we're hearing even some businesses are even having trouble getting insurance right now as well. So it's kind of concerning what's going on in the market.
Good. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, anyone else?
Councillor Millen.
Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. Kevin, I'm wondering, in terms of transportation services, do you think the pandemic would have any or may have some impact on our capital or our ability to build capital items or spend in that region?
That's a good question. The senior management have talked about, we've been reviewing our capital projects this year and what hasn't, for example, what hasn't got done in 2020 due to like long-term care. They couldn't do some things inside the home. Same with our housing buildings, and how much can they carry forward and actually accomplish next year with their current staff levels and what is available in the marketplace for contractors. And as well, like you said, the price increases we're seeing on lumber, for example, and stuff. So yeah, roads, what we saw this year has been good returns, but what does 2021 hold? We're looking at, and I guess we've asked staff to revisit their numbers, Councillor Milne, but that's where we're at with this.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I don't envy your road ahead of you, but I have full confidence.
Thank you.
I don't see any others, Madam Clerk.
No, sir.
Okay. So maybe then I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion before us to receive, to adopt the assumptions and to include those assumptions in the draft, and to approve the draft budget schedule? Any opposed? Seeing none, I'll say that is carried. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 5B, Youth and Diversity Report. I believe that we have, that is going to be moved by Councillor Carlton and seconded by Councillor Woodbury. And I believe we have Jacinda and Melissa, or just Melissa?
We have both. Jacinda and Melissa are here, but I'm going to do a quick introduction for them because you haven't met Melissa yet. She is our newest recruit in local economic development for the Local Immigration Partnership.
I've met Melissa.
Yes, you have. Yes, but the rest of council, we wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity. And because Melissa and Jacinda, this is really their work, it's important that they're the ones who are going to tell you about it. So just by way of a very quick introduction to the report, this is the follow-up from the notice of motion that Councillor Desai brought back on July 9th. And our apologies that it has taken this long to get it here, but we were just on the cusp of launching the Local Immigration Partnership, and we wanted to be able to not talk about it hypothetically, but actually talk about what's now happening. So we've put together this report to talk about all of the initiatives that have come to fruition over the past couple of years. In 2017, we really started to see a shift, and in 2018, we made it formal through Economic Development Department with the hiring of Jacinda as an Economic Development Officer specifically focused on people attraction and retention. So that was a really big shift in economic development, and that has carried through to today and going forward into the future. So like I mentioned, we've been working on many projects with our community partners since 2017. And now with the Local Immigration Partnership, we have a program going forward for the next 3 to 5 years at least. So it's a good moment to not have the short-term quick projects that we're typically used to, where we get a pilot something and then it ends and we pilot again and it ends. Now we actually have a long-term commitment. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Melissa and Jacinda, who will take you through the report.
Excellent. Welcome, ladies.
Good morning, Council. I better take over before Savannah gives away my whole presentation. So the last time I stood in front of Grey County Council was to provide an overview of the New to Grey initiative. A lot has happened since then in this region. So I do believe that the New to Grey initiative created a platform for regional municipal involvement on addressing newcomer needs. With funding from the province, we were able to dedicate time and energy into building the foundation of welcoming communities and increase the partnerships and the awareness to aid in the retention and attraction of newcomers. So supporting the successful integration of newcomers into our neighborhoods and labor market became really a big focus, and with our local partner champions, created kind of that pathway for so many other initiatives. So through workshops, a regional forum, research, ongoing discussions, and truly stronger partnerships, we are continually building our capacity to welcome newcomers and increasing community awareness on the benefits of newcomers coming and staying in Grey County. A new partnership with the Rural Employment Initiative in Peel helped promote Grey County to immigrants living in GTA and looking to relocate to a rural community. So through information sessions, bus tours, and participation in our 3 of our regional job fairs, Grey County is now seen as a welcoming community with employment opportunities and a really strong network of supports. Currently, Grey County sits on AMO's Municipal Immigration Committee. And through this, municipalities meet with both provincial and federal representatives on the topic of immigration and provide that insight into our local needs and of our rural municipalities. There was a regional forum in 2018 on Newcomer Integration, which brought together multiple stakeholders that represented, 5 counties together, and brought us together to discuss kind of the best practices and actionable strategies in attraction, retention, and integration activities. Our work in supporting newcomers did not go unnoticed. In 2019, the Pathways to Prosperity invited Grey Bruce as one of the 5 rural communities to consult with on challenges and best practices in attracting and retaining newcomers in rural communities. So P2P, Pathways to Prosperity, then submitted a public report to both federal and provincial governments, and it was called Beyond the Big City, How Small Communities Across Canada Can Attract and Retain Newcomers. So it was really this partnership and this report that was a catalyst to Grey Bruce region, a catalyst for Grey Bruce region to apply for settlement services and local immigration partnership projects to support our newcomers. I'm going to mute and I'll let Melissa take over here.
Good morning, Council. Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to introduce myself as the coordinator for this really exciting initiative, the Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership. And so I'm just here today to provide a bit of an introduction and introduce myself as well. So thank you for having me. As many of you know, Grey and Bruce counties partnered together in their application for funding for a local immigration partnership. And they were successful in this funding application and have been fully funded for this initiative through Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. As Savannah mentioned, this is a 3 to 5 year project. So we have received full funding for that full term, which is really exciting. The initiative in Grey and Bruce will address the isolation of newcomers in our large geographic area. And we'll do this by increasing our capacity for coordination, connection, and collaboration of our service providers and businesses and community partners to increase our capacity for fostering a welcoming community. And so for numerous reasons, Grey and Bruce decided to partner in this together, but one of those reasons is that many of our service providers and community partners either provide services to or cover both counties in terms of their services and their support. So as you will see further into the presentation, when I provide an update as to some of the partners that we have, you'll notice that that's a common theme in that these service providers and organizations cover both Grey and Bruce counties. So for those of you that aren't familiar with what a local immigration partnership maybe is, I would just like to give a brief introduction. So they're community-based partnerships that support planning around the needs of newcomers. And specifically, they're partnerships that, 1, foster an approach to engage settlement programs and other institutions to integrating newcomers. 2, they support community-based knowledge sharing and local strategic planning. And they also improve the coordination of effective services that facilitate immigrant settlement and integration. So what you'll notice from that is that LIPs don't provide direct service to our newcomer community, but we are fortunate in that our local YMCA has also received funding through IRCC or Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada to provide settlement and language services directly to our newcomers. So rather, the LIP initiative focuses on supporting with the 3 C's, so the coordination, connection, and collaboration of our businesses, organizations, and service providers who are the ones supporting our newcomer community. So the LIP, or Local Immigration Partnership, has a partner council, and so we have multiple stakeholders that will be involved in our partnership. And the council ensures that we have the multiple stakeholders at the table together, collaborating and connecting to build our capacity and share resources. in order to better support our newcomer communities and foster welcoming communities. So I would just like to provide you a brief kind of glimpse into some of the partners that we do have, and I'm not going to name them specifically, but kind of some of the groups that we have involved currently. So on our partnership council, we do have representation from both the county and municipal level. We have our school boards represented, we have post-secondary represented, we have labor market planning board representation, we have legal and police services representation, we have healthcare, adult learning and language training, we have our employment service providers as well as our settlement services providers. We have our community organizations, some really great organizations that we've partnered with and look forward to working with going forward. And again, that's an example of many of them cover both Bruce and Grey counties. So they're a great asset to our council, as well as businesses and business associations. So by bringing everybody together, we'll really be able to build our capacity and work together to be able to foster these welcoming communities. And then just in close, I wanted to provide you some next steps and accomplishments that we've already experienced. So 3 weeks ago on September 15th, we held our first partnership council meeting. It was as we were building our partnership council, we held this first introduction meeting to introduce some of our partners to one another, as well as to the LIP initiative in general. And so at that council meeting, we had just over 30 partners in attendance. And since that event just 3 weeks ago, we've actually grown our partnership council to almost 50 representatives. So it's really gaining traction, and a lot of our partners, our community partners and service providers and businesses and municipalities are excited about this initiative, and you can see how quickly it's grown. So we're really excited to be here and to continue this work. We're in the very early stages of this work. I came on board in July, but we're really excited to move forward. And as Savannah said, we're here for 3 to 5 years. And so I also just wanted to highlight, as you'll see from the report, 2 of our big focuses this year for GB-LIP, Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership, in addition to building our partnership council and starting to collaborate in those terms. 2 of our other big focuses will be to brand our Grey Bruce Local Immigration Partnership, to provide a strong brand to represent our work and the partners that are involved. And as well, we are working to develop our settlement strategy and action plan. So these contracts have been awarded to 2 different consultants for each project. And so we're working with these consultants currently in the development of both. And we look forward to bringing the settlement strategy and action plan forward to council in March for your consideration. Jacinda.
Melissa has truly done a really great job in the short time that she's been here. So I commend her for the time and effort she's put into the LIP program. I just wanted to just talk briefly about youth and retention in this area. We continue to strategize on youth retention in Grey County through the Young Professionals Network events. We brought together young people to increase social and business connections, again, reinforcing the importance of social capital. At the same time, events such as these highlight businesses and communities within Grey County. It's a perfect example is one of our newcomers from South Africa was opening a jiu-jitsu martial arts studio and was looking for another instructor to partner with. It was at one of the YPN events where we were able to connect him with one of our newcomers from Brazil who instructs the same martial arts practice, and now they are in the business together. The Business Enterprise Center, summer company program geared towards 15 to 29, looking to start their own summer businesses. That is still ongoing. BEC participates in speaking engagements on youth retention and partners with local organizations such as Launchpad, OYAP, Community Foundation Grey Bruce, Georgian College, and the school boards to ensure that youth feel connected and understand the opportunities out there and consider staying in our region. Recently, BEC partnered with Settlement Services to deliver a workshop on fundamentals of running a new business for newcomers. And then my role as attraction and retention of people is dedicated to those efforts. And with our community partners listed in the appendices, we will have a stronger impact within our region. We had created an attraction and retention campaign in 2019 to roll out in 2020. But with the current pandemic, we are accommodating for a shift to 2021, which I'm sure you're all aware of. And I just wanted to say, thank you for your time. And I really hope that next time we present to council, we're standing in front of you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jacinda, and thank you, Melissa, and congratulations on your successful first presentation to council. Big smile on your face, I'm sure. And thank you as well, Savannah. Council, are there any questions?
Councillor Desai.
Councillor Desai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Warden. As Savannah stated at the start, this report has come out of the notice of motion that I brought forward. And I just want to say thank you very much for it. And I can totally appreciate delaying it to get real data on the LIP. I sat on the LIP meeting, on the first LIP meeting that they had a few weeks ago. And quite frankly, it's an amazing group of people that's around that table. And last night, and I've meant to send Melissa an email about this, but it completely slipped my mind. But last night, Grey Highlands Council passed a motion appointing me to be the Grey Highlands representative on the LIP. So I'm really looking forward to that. Initially, when I'd first given my notice of motion, it was to set up a task force that dealt with youth and diversity retention and promotion. Having read the report, I think staff's doing a great job. It's already a priority for staff to attract and retain and promote diversity and youth within our community. So I don't think it would serve staff well to have that task force. In fact, it would be a negative use of that time. But nonetheless, I just want to thank staff for bringing this report and taking the time to do a very detailed report, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome, Councillor Desai. Madam Clerk, anyone else?
CAO Wingrove.
Go ahead.
You're on mute, Kim.
Okay, there we are. Thank you. Before we leave the Economic Development Group, I don't know if some of you are probably subscribers to our social media. There was a posting launched today for Thanksgiving, thanking our small businesses, and with council's indulgence, I'd like Savannah to introduce that, and if you don't mind, just taking a quick look. I think it's really, really well done.
Good, Savannah.
Thank you. The video, it definitely pulls at our hearts. It is something that we worked with our communications team and economic development and tourism to recognize just how amazing our small businesses have been. From the beginning of this pandemic, we have had a theme of resilience all the way through, and never more is that becoming more apparent than as we kind of waver with where we are with all the unknowns still to come. And it's a compilation of videos that happened over the Rediscover Grey campaign that Olivia's put together for us. And she's been such a wonderful welcome addition and asset to the team to be able to do this, and Philly narrated it. So we also have radio ads going with the same message, because to us, it's really important to say thank you to our businesses and to our residents, because our businesses are going above and beyond to change the way that they function and the way that they do their daily lives to make it better for us so that they can stick around, and our residents are going above and beyond to be able to support our businesses and keep them here until we can welcome our droves of tourists back and until we are out of this pandemic. So it's a dual message and just a wonderful video. So I think Rob has it available to be able to show, and thank you so much, Kim, for the opportunity, because we're very proud of it.
Yes.
Are you seeing that okay?
Yes.
Grey County thanks you for supporting locally owned businesses this fall. Over the past 7 months, our businesses have shown amazing resilience as they've adapted to serve you. This Thanksgiving, take some time to thank them for all their hard work. Choose to shop in our many downtown stores when buying seasonal supplies or gifts, and stock up for your Thanksgiving meal with delicious foods direct from local farms. Small businesses are the heart of our communities. Show them you care when you give thanks this fall.
Grey County, color it your way.
Thank you.
Very good, very good. Thank you for that. Councillor Milne, I believe you have a question.
Well, it's just a comment, and I just wanted to thank these young ladies for the work they've been doing. It's tremendously important for the future of our communities, and I'm just constantly amazed at the talent that we attract to this organization and the work they do. It's very important work, like I said, and I am thrilled to see that we're not just giving it lip service. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Anyway, thank you. I had to say it before Councillor decided.
Okay. Anyone else?
No,
Great.
sir.
Thank you for the presentation, and I will now call the question on the motion. Is there anyone opposed? That will be carried then. Thank you. How are we feeling? Good still? We can keep pressing on, or does anyone need a break? I'm seeing nods for pressing on. Excellent. We'll go to item 5C then, the ATV and side-by-side request. That is being moved by Councillor Mackey and seconded by Councillor Hutchison. And is it Sarah that's got the floor?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Can everyone, trying to share my screen here, can everyone see that?
No, we.
Oh, okay, hold on. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Hit share. How's that? Perfect.
Excellent.
Good.
Okay. So good morning and thank you, everyone. This is my first council Zoom presentation, so bear with me here. And this was a rather lengthy report that I wrote, so I thank you for taking the time to read it. I will try and keep my presentation brief, as brief as I can. I am a planner, remember. On July 23rd, at the Committee of the Whole meeting, there was a delegation that spoke from Dufferin Grey ATV Club, and they requested that the county consider permitting a wider vehicle on the CP Rail Trail and the Harkaway Forest Track, where they currently have permissions through agreements with the county. The current permitted width for ATVs in these areas is 54 inches, and the club was requesting an increase to 65 inches. This is a similar request that they had made back in 2016 that came before the Planning and Community Development Committee. As a result of that request, among a number of other requests that they brought forward at the same time, the Planning and Community Development Committee directed staff to complete the Recreational Trails Master Plan, or the RTMP. The RTMP is designed to comprehensively address and give clear guidance to staff and council when considering proposals of this nature. So I won't go into great detail about the RTMP, but basically when we get these types of requests, the RTMP developed criteria or evaluation questions to help allow staff to assess each request on an individual basis. So these 3 questions are: is the new use consistent with the long-term preservation of the forest and land? Is the new use compatible with existing uses and infrastructure in the area where it's proposed? And is enforcement an issue? And does the county have the resources to provide adequate enforcement for the protection of the forest or trail if the new use is allowed? So as a result of the RTMP, the allowance of side-by-sides was considered up to a maximum width of the widest permitted ATV. Because they had, one of the requests that they had previously not had permission for was to actually have side-by-sides on the trail. And based on this criteria, staff believed that it would be permitted or could be permitted as long as it could be accommodated by the existing infrastructure available. However, due to the industry and the direction that the sport is moving, and as we heard from Dufferin Grey in their presentation, this restriction of size of vehicles is not what their membership is going towards. Many of the vehicles that are being preferred by those users are these larger vehicles up to the 65 inches, and hence why the club brought forward their report. So if we evaluate this request based on the criteria, which is essentially what we did, So the first question would be, is the new use consistent with the long-term preservation of the forest and land? The new use of larger vehicles would require significant trail upgrades, including widening of gates, trail surfaces, culverts, etc. In some of the trail, in some areas, the trail cannot be widened due to geography, steep slopes, or other infrastructure barriers. The existing gates are designed and intended for vehicles no greater than 54 inches to prevent larger vehicles accessing the trail, which was an issue prior to installing the gates. The widening of the gates essentially makes them obsolete in preventing trespassing by other non-permitted vehicles. Non-permitted vehicles have a greater ability to damage the trail as it is not designed for them, with speed, things like speed and structure, etc. And it will provide more access for more vehicles to trespass on private property. Now, this year during ATV season, we did enlist the assistance of OPP as well as the West Grey Police to help with patrolling. OPP patrolled weekly during the ATV season, and West Grey Police patrolled occasionally with the club itself. Staff, as well as our contract staff, we just simply don't have the ability to patrol the trail, nor do we have the qualifications to do so. As far as I understand, the police were only patrolling for violations related to the Highway Traffic Act, which was speeding and careless. But as a result of the staffing limitations and the limitations of the police services, there is a potential loss for protecting our property and our neighbors' property that abut the trail. So the second evaluation question or criteria was, is the new use compatible with existing uses and infrastructure that's where in the area where it's proposed? So as noted in Dufferin Gray's presentation in July, as well as what I just noted in our last question criteria, there would be significant upgrades required to the trail itself, additional signage and related infrastructure in order to accommodate the larger vehicles. We did a desktop exercise that would give us a number to estimate the cost of what it would be to grade and widen the trail where it's possible, up to a maximum width of 12 feet from the standard 8 feet. And that was an estimate of just over $15,000 per kilometer. There's approximately 62 kilometers from Grey Road 18 to Dundalk, which would put the cost for widening the trail alone just over $900,000. This obviously was done on a desktop exercise. It's based on the cost scenarios for the last 3 years that we did trail grading. We divided the kilometers based on the total project cost, and then we divided that would have been for an 8-foot wide trail, and then we divided that by 8 and multiplied it by 12 to get what it would cost for a 12, and then we took the average. So it's a little bit of math there, but it was basically kind of just to give us a rough estimate. It doesn't include things like tree clearing, earth excavation, rock removal, etc. Those things also need to be evaluated if this was something that council did want us to consider. It's also worth noting that we did not take into consideration the increased cost that it would maintenance would be. So that would increase the annual cost of maintenance as well. With regards to gates, the estimated cost to modify a gate is $300, and if we need to replace or install a new gate, that's $1,700. With a total, I'm not going to go into all the numbers and where they all are, but the total estimated cost for gate upgrades would be $36,000. In addition to that, there was 7 bridges identified in this span of trail, as well as 5 very narrow areas that just simply wouldn't be able to be widened. And the recommendation would be to sign these areas if possible, and that was a total cost of $2,400. We did not evaluate the cost of widening any of the bridges. We just knew that would be a cost prohibitive number. Using, for example, the recent project of Culvert 21 that had an estimated, total project cost of over $700,000. So we just knew that that wasn't something that we would even consider. So the option for those areas would be to sign them. So that brings the total cost to just under $1 million to complete upgrades for this proposed use. If we did not widen the trails but allowed for the use, there would be some significant safety concerns that come along with multi-use trails, specifically the interaction with motorized versus non-motorized users. Without completing these upgrades to accommodate the larger vehicle, it's also arguable that the larger vehicle increases the incompatibility with other trail users on the trail. However, if committee wishes to proceed with the larger size, public consultation is definitely recommended with other trail user groups. So obviously modification would be a necessity to accommodate a wider vehicle and would indicate that the proposed use isn't compatible with the existing infrastructure. So the third evaluation criteria deals with enforcement. And again, we touched on it briefly. But just to summarize, some of the main complaints that we receive regarding ATV use generally fall under trespassing, noise, rutting, excessive speed, dust generation, and basically them being on trails that they're not supposed to, which I guess is another way of saying trespassing. In the past, when we've had problem areas, we have enlisted our contract staff from Grey Sauble to monitor problem areas, but we have limited resources to extend beyond this service, and they certainly don't have the skills or the qualifications, I should say, to enforce any kind of regulation. That said, we did have assistance from local police services in this regard, but they're limited to when they can go out. ATV wardens are generally out 2 or more times during the week based on how they are reporting to us. But again, they're not out to enforce, they're out to educate and assist. And they, again, don't have qualifications, nor would we want to put them at any kind of risk to trying to enforce anything. So those are the 3 evaluation requests. There were a few other points raised in the Dufferin Gray presentation that staff wanted to touch upon. Significant changes to the Highway Traffic Act occurred related to this in late 2015, and that basically changed the Highway Traffic Act to allow for an off-road vehicle, which includes a side-by-side or an ATV, to be permitted on a road, provided the municipality has a bylaw that permits the use. So in 2016, Grey County did pass a bylaw that allowed for these types of use on all of our county roads, save and except for a few, mainly in urban areas. Due to the increased size, it may be more appropriate that these larger vehicles are directed to roads as opposed to trails. In this scenario, they're still able to access all the amenities that they desire, as well as getting to and from their various trail locations. The increased size does result in incompatibility issues with other users and the existing infrastructure. We also did some research regarding what other municipalities were doing outside of the county. We did struggle with trying to find good comparators. The main comparator that we found was Bruce County. Bruce County does allow for side-by-sides. They are a multi-use trail. However, their trail width is wider, and they do have gates that do allow for this. Our average width is, the range is 2.3 meters to 5.5 meters and averaging 3.24 meters. Bruce County has a consistent main line from 3.6 to 4.3 meters, just to give an example. The other comparators that we used were predominantly a motorized use. So although they were a good resource to determine widths and infrastructure needs, they weren't a good comparator for a recreational multi-use trail. The next thing that we wanted to touch upon was emergency response time. This was a big concern that the club raised. Many of the lower tier fire departments have a side-by-side in their fleet to assist with emergencies. The gates impeding on emergency time was a significant concern, specifically the time taken to open the gate. All of the departments that we discussed this with really had no concerns with the time needed to open the gate in the event of an emergency. In most cases, they would take roads to get to the closest access point. And if they couldn't just drive around it, then they would unlock it. But of all three that we heard back from, there was no concerns regarding this. The other thing that we wanted to raise was the trail use in urban areas. This was raised when we had some initial conversations with the county's insurer, and they indicated that they would be encouraging the trend of reducing motorized uses in urban areas, where obviously there is an increase in use by non-motorized users. We can see this is already in effect in Owen Sound, and that's why that area of the trail is restricted to non-motorized uses, at least in the summer months, because they do allow snowmobiles in the winter. With the changes to the Highway Traffic Act and the Off-Road Vehicles Act, it would indicate that these types of vehicles are being recognized as more appropriate for roadways. Finally, with regards to accessibility, although the trail isn't accessible, we do know that there are users that have limited mobility and accessibility aids that can work on the trail. We do know that they do get used from time to time by those types of users. So we thought it would be beneficial to reach out to a resource that we have called the Ontario Network of Accessibility Professionals, or ONAP. It's largely comprised of accessibility coordinators that work for municipalities or schools, colleges, and universities. They indicated if there was somebody with limited mobility that had an accessibility aid when meeting a motorized use on the trail, or a wider motorized use than is already permitted, in areas where they should be pulling over, it could be problematic. And so we should introduce at minimum a certain distance apart pullover areas. And they had a number that was a regulated number of 30 meters, which on a trail like ours is essentially, we might as well be considering widening it if we're going to be allowing a larger vehicle on it. There was also the point raised about side-by-sides being used by those with limited mobility. Those who responded from ONAP had indicated that it wasn't something that they had heard of before. However, it could be something unique to our area, that those with limited mobility are using side-by-sides to access trails via trails and nature this way. So we did also want to touch upon the contributions of Dufferin Gray ATV Club. Staff they've been an excellent partner to work with. Staff appreciate the relationship that we have built with the club over the last number of years. And I just wanted to highlight some of the big projects that they've helped us out with. That includes Dufferin Gray ATV Club, along with the local snowmobile club, raised funds in 2019 for a portion of a bridge replacement that was just north of Markdale. That was significant for us. And then again in 2015, they applied for funding through the National Trails Coalition in order to pay for the replacement of a lot of the gates that were still having an older model on them. And that was significant. We were awarded $15,000. Sorry, they were awarded $15,000, and with a total project cost of $37,500. So they paid the difference of $22,500 from their club fund. In addition to this, their community involvement is significant. They do annual fundraisers multiple times a year. They also donated $6,000 towards the Culvert 21 project, and they are simply a wonderful asset to our community. So then we get to the consideration part of of my report, and basically it's, do we allow for them based on the RTMP evaluation, or do we not allow for them based on the RTMP requirements, or do we allow for the use? And although staff are sympathetic to the current direction that the ATV market is moving towards with regard to the type of vehicles that are preferred on the market, and that their membership is using, based on the existing infrastructure, the cost to upgrade and the limitations with enforcement, we're recommending that the larger vehicle not be permitted at this time, and that the size remains at 54 inches. It has been demonstrated that there are alternatives to using the CP Rail Trail, and there are significant cost increases. Sorry, I lost my spot. With potential risks to managing the trail. And therefore, it would seem appropriate that the county maintains the existing limit of size for 54 inches based on the current conditions of the trail and based on the current contract staffing resources regarding employment. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Councillor Milne has a question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Deputy Warden, before we move to questions, I wonder if our mover and seconder would just confirm which of the resolutions they are supporting, whether it's staff recommendation or permission, just so we have a motion to move forward with.
Yeah. In fact, Madam Clerk, I'm going to suggest that the motion reflect the staff recommendation. And so we are really looking for a mover and seconder for the recommendation to refuse and to find alternatives. If you are wanting to have it approved, then you would vote against this particular motion. We'll come back to that in a second though. But just to confirm with Councillors Mackey and Hutchison, are you okay with having your names be associated with the moving and seconding the staff recommendation to not approve?
The mover is not prepared to support the staff recommendation, Deputy Warden.
Okay, then I'm going to be looking for another mover, moved by Councillor Burley. Councillor Hutchison, are you okay with having your name be associated with seconding?
Yes, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Okay, now we will go to discussion and questions. Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. Comprehensive report, Sarah. Thank you very much for all of that. I think it's a little over the top on some of the numbers and the suggestions that you've made there regarding the width. But one particular question I might have, and it's related to the gates at the access points. How many of the access points are the gates simply a decoration, and most of the users of the trail go around the gates? Do you have any idea?
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute here. I know that I had this somewhere, and I believe Morgan is on the line too. I don't know if Morgan knows that exact number. I'm just trying to see quickly here.
We can move on.
I can get that information for you.
Well, I guess my point is that there are access points where it's essentially not restricted to any vehicle in terms of size, because you can simply drive around the gates. I've seen many of them like that. So I guess what I'm suggesting is that the size, and I think we can all agree that size does matter, but the size of the vehicle is not restricted even now because of the gates. So I'm not sure that the size of the vehicle is really an impediment to the use of the trail. That's my point.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Milne, and you had to go there, didn't you? Any other questions?
Yes, I have Councillor Desai, Warden McQueen, and Councillor Mackey.
Okay, Councillor Desai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Warden. I had a concerned citizen reach out to me. They went through the report and they were concerned with the staff recommendation, mainly because, and I think Sarah mentioned it, that side-by-side users are a growing number of trail users now. And it makes sense, and this is what the citizen said to me, it makes sense to make the trail safer for them to use as well. Further, I mean, and Councillor Milnes brought it up, like there's people are already using the trail in side-by-sides, whether we allow them or not. So having said that, if people are going to use it regardless, should we not, as a county, endeavor to make it safer for those people? And my question through you, Mr. Deputy Warden, to Sarah, is if we continue down this road of refusing to allow the side-by-sides, would we be putting ourselves in a possibly litigious situation if a user that's not permitted happens to be on the trail and causes a mishap and causes injury either to themselves or to another user? Would we be liable for that? And I think I already know the answer because of joint and several liability and the perception that municipalities have deep pockets. So, you know, I don't know if Sarah can assuage those concerns of mine, that we could avoid some liability there. I stand firmly in the favor of over a period of time making the trail safer for all users. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mr. Deputy Warden.
That's a question I can answer. Okay. I think that might be a Michael question.
Just 1 second, Sarah, if I might, Madam Clerk.
I actually wonder if CAO Wingrove wanted to speak to a couple of those points.
Sarah, do you mind if we have?
Not at all.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we've already discussed earlier this morning, we do have some concerns with insurance and how the insurance industry is changing. I think that, you know, to Councillor Desai's question, that does probably bear some further discussions with them, as well as some considerations by our county solicitor. If council directs, we can certainly take some additional time to investigate further and see if there's a way that we could actually get some specifics around what we'd be looking at. I think we are allowing side-by-sides now. This is a question of whether or not we're going to allow larger side-by-sides on the trail. And, you know, as much as we have really great partners and we're really glad to see people using the trails in the forests, our trails are the size that they are. And I think we all need to make these decisions with a full assessment of the risks involved and the expense involved. And I think that's what Sarah and Randy have tried to provide you with some sense of today.
Whoops, it would help if I unmuted. Sarah, anything to add? And I do acknowledge Councillor Potter, I did see your hand.
I think Kim has covered it quite well, and I was basically going to defer to those that have a higher expertise in the litigious area than I do.
Okay, Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and I guess now just a general comment to County Council. I'm not suggesting that we undertake the entire upgrades to the trail at one go. $1 million, that would be close to 2% rate increase on our taxes. I'm not suggesting we do it all in one go, but we could look at a phased-in approach where we start doing that work. But again, I guess that depends on whether this motion passes or is defeated. So I'll wait to make these further comments on that until we get into the next motion if we do get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desai. Warden McQueen.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden, and you're doing a great job. So thank you for all the work you're doing there. So certainly reading through this report last night, and I know this has been something that has been on our minds for quite some time, and we certainly have the trail system, which is we're grateful to be able to have that trail availability. So a couple of things. I know it's a growing industry, from ATVs to side-by-sides and also off-road vehicles, that certainly continues to grow. A few comments. Certainly with ATVs or a single person use vehicle, there is those that do have the up seat that does allow two individuals on those vehicles, and but more so with the introduction or the popularity of side-by-sides, it's become more where there are almost like a vehicle where they have a roof and a windshield and doors and stuff like that. And just like a half an hour ago here, we just had a big rain coming through. I can see why a lot more people are going to that, because they're more weather prone in the sense of the use. And certainly I think from what I understand from number of users from the Grey Dufferin ATV Club, is more of the senior riders have been going more that route, probably for those particular reasons of the comfort that has been warranted from those. I guess I'm going to look at, maybe could this motion be deferred, for the simple reason is I think it would be good, and I know the ATV Club, more specifically the Grey Dufferin ATV Club, has in the past put money toward gates and signage, and I understand that they are quite willing to help put costs or put money toward that upgrade. And certainly, as Deputy Mayor Desai has said, is maybe there's a phased in approach. And also the other question is, are there grants available from that aspect of upgrades, and could they, I know from a tourism aspect through the ministry, Lisa McLeod has certainly echoed that certainly tourism and recreation and economic development are high on the agenda right now, in the sense of what's going on with COVID-19 and a number of points around that. Also, I understand that the Grey Dufferin ATV Club does provide $15 million worth of liability for the use of that trail, which probably a lot of other users do not provide at all. So I guess going back to the part of controlling what we have, if you control something and able to work with other providers or users that do have insurance, it's a lot better than having it a free-for-all and not controlling it, because it takes those one situations where it ruins it for the rest, because they're not part of that. And I think that's been a struggle with the Grey Dufferin ATV Club, and that's part of the reasons that you do have wardens and that part of it. Certainly from a municipal side, as from a lower tier, we have arenas, we have trails. I know a few years back there was a lot of liability. I think you maybe mentioned it the other day, Mr. Deputy Warden, about bike parks and the liability around that is, certainly we always have to weigh our risks of what risks we want to sort of absorb, and where it's too high risk that we feel that it's not worth the risk versus the cost and everything like that. And I do know that over the years, with regards to arenas, we have been through our insurance providers, certainly the due diligence of checklists, make sure we check this off, make sure we check that off. Are we doing the best we can do to limit our liability? And that's something that we would still need to continue moving forward. So I guess, Mr. Deputy Warden, I'm looking at moving a motion to defer this at this time, simply to sort of maybe, and I want to thank Sarah and staff for bringing the report forward, just to give an opportunity to maybe tease out some of those points about the cost, what could the club provide, are there other avenues on those things? And I would really like, as an individual, I've never actually really been on the trail. I don't know if there's drone footage or just something that would be an opportunity. You can't take a bus down the trail line, Mr. Deputy Warden, and see that. But I think it, sometimes visual would be also good. And I don't know if that's something's possible, some drone footage or something like that could be available. Certainly with COVID-19, we, from the distancing thing, we just can't all jump on something or whatever and go for a ride. So at this time, Mr. Deputy Warden, I'm moving a motion to defer it. If I at the lucky of having a seconder, and just to sort of tease out a few more of the insurance part is, what is a liability for us? Is there opportunities of partnering with the local club in the sense of funding and that kind? Is there a possibility of phase in? I think it would be our due diligence just to sort of get some more answers on that before we make the final decision at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Warden McQueen. With the guidance of our clerk, I'm going to deal with the motion to defer first, but we would need a seconder for that, correct? Yes,
that is correct.
Seconded by Councillor Robinson.
Oh.
So, I'm sorry?
Oh, sorry. No, I unmuted myself by mistake. My apologies.
No problem. So we have a mover and a seconder. Any discussion on the motion to defer? I know that we had a list of speakers on the, excuse me, on the main motion.
Yes,
but
I see Councillor Mackey has a comment, and I will just remind council that we have a motion to defer on the floor, so that's what the speaking needs to be related to.
Yeah, the motion to defer. So, Councillor Mackey, are you wanting to speak on the motion to defer?
Thanks, Deputy Warden. I'll briefly speak on the motion to defer. I think we should make a decision today. The staff has spent a lot of time. There are two options. Option B actually looks into some of the additional, option B is not saying we're approving the larger machines. It would just allow further information to come back for council to make that final decision, such as appropriate funding, public consultation, a complete assessment of the project with actual costing or accurate costing, and a review with the county insurer. So I think if individuals are in support of wider ATVs, then we should be going along with option B and getting that work started today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mackey. Are there any other speakers on the motion to defer?
Mr. Warden, point of order, just to say, is the comment that was just made, option B isn't on the floor, so only option A is on the floor. So that was the reason I brought forward the motion to defer.
Right. I agree. Any other speakers on the motion to defer? Then I will call the question. Is there anyone opposed to the motion to defer? I see 1, 2, 3. Madam Clerk, I'm going to need your help.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I see 9 hands raised.
Okay, 9 opposed. And I'm going to say, is there anyone in favor of the motion to defer? Just to be clear.
Mr. Warden, I'd like a recorded vote, please.
Okay. Let's all drop that.
Makes it easier. Okay, Councillor, so you're voting on the deferral? Councillor Mackey?
No.
No? Councillor Burley?
No.
Councillor Carlton?
No.
Warden McQueen?
Yes.
Councillor Desai?
In favor.
Councillor Patterson?
No.
Councillor Hicks?
Nay.
Councillor Clumpus?
No.
Councillor Kentner?
No.
Councillor Body?
No.
Councillor O'Leary?
Opposed.
Councillor Woodbury,
In favor.
Councillor Millen,
In favor.
Councillor Soever,
In favor.
Councillor Potter,
Opposed.
Councillor Robinson,
In favor.
Councillor Hutchinson.
In favor.
The motion to defer is lost, 34-53. So now we're back to the first motion, staff's recommendation.
Now we're on the main motion, and I had two speakers on the main motion still, Councillor Mackey and then Councillor Potter. Councillor Mackey
and Councillor Body.
And Councillor Body, okay. So Councillor Mackey.
Thanks once again, Deputy Warden. And through you to Sarah, a question you mentioned in your report that Bruce County is allowing the wider ATVs. So two parts to that question. Has Bruce County experienced any negative impacts since they introduced wider ATVs? And secondly, did they spend any significant funds to accommodate wider ATVs?
Sarah?
I have to admit, I had some help with my research and I was not the one that did the questioning about this, but I will certainly, I can certainly find out the answer for you and get back to you with a response from that with regard. So the question specifically was, are they experiencing any impacts with the side-by-side use and how the costing that they invested? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And additionally, in the wintertime, we have, our facilities are used by the snowmobile clubs, and two snowmobiles are able to pass one another on the trail. So I guess I have some question about the trail not being wide enough to accommodate ATVs. Like two snowmobiles, are about 4 feet. Each snowmobile is about 4 feet each, and they can pass one another, on the trail. So I question why, ATVs can't safely, the larger side-by-sides can't also safely, pass one another on our trails. Certainly spent a lot of time on the trails and have seen them used by bicyclists, walkers, snowshoers, snowmobiles, ATVs, and horseback riders. And generally people are quite respectful of one another's needs on the trail. At least that's been my experience. I think it would be a mistake from a tourism perspective. For some of our seniors, it is one of the only ways they can't get on, ATVs anymore. It's hard to climb on, and certainly, the spouse to get onto just an ATV is difficult. So for our senior population, the side-by-sides have been, a way to get out into the countryside and enjoy nature. So I certainly support option B, and will be voting against the motion that's on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. And I have several points to make. The first is that it seems like every few years, whenever they want to sell a new batch of machines, they come up with a wider or some new feature, and I just wonder, where will it end? We're getting bigger and bigger ATVs, and we're expected to ask our taxpayers to pay for bigger and bigger trails. I think the CAO said it earlier, our trails are what they are. We provide them for recreation, and I almost wonder at what point does it stop being a recreational trail and start being a road? Because these machines are getting bigger and bigger. I note that the average width of a car is about the same as for one of these vehicles. So I don't see that we're doing recreation anymore as much as providing a road. The question of liability, no matter what we do, we are liable. So if two side-by-sides crash into each other, we're still liable, whether we widen the trail or didn't. So I don't see that that is really an issue. We are going to be liable one way or the other. And finally, you know, we are looking ahead at a very difficult year, maybe 2 or 3 years. We don't have enough money for all the affordable housing we need. We don't have enough money for all the seniors housing we need. We don't have enough money for all the long-term care personnel that we need. We have to look at those before we start thinking about widening trails for wider ATVs, just so that the ATV companies can sell more machines. So that is my stand on it. I will be opposing this, or I will be supporting option A, I should say.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Body.
Yeah, thank you. I've bicycled from Owen Sound to Proton Station, so I've done a big chunk of it. There are places that when an ATV comes along, even a side-by-side, that there is not a room on a bicycle to get out of the way. You know, you got to get up in the edge as they pass, and it's great to share. I was very much and continue to be very much in support of ATVs on the trails and the tourism. However, there are places that it's just not wide enough unless you're going to widen the base and everything. You're going to be excluding bicyclers and other people that, you know, there's just some places that you can't hide. There's not enough sort of, I don't know, what would you call it in the railway? Side rail. So I'm opposed to this for now. I know that there are some side-by-sides that are fitting, you can get by. When you start getting bigger and bigger, not only are we running into expense, but it's making it more difficult for other users that are perhaps unrepresented in this conversation and their use of it. So I don't think we have to go wider to continue to support the club that has been a great club and very active, and support ATV tourism, but I'm not supporting it going wider. So I'm going to support the motion that is on the table. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Soever.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yeah, my concern is, as is Ian's concern, Councillor Body's concern, is the safety aspect of going wider. I'm very familiar with ATVs, and certainly, you know, the larger ones are easier to control, and we've gone to those in the mining industry as well, because people had a tendency to flip the smaller ones a lot easier. And but that being said, I'm just wondering, we've heard earlier today that insurance companies are increasing their premiums and so on. Is there going to be a difference in what we're quoted for insurance as we allow larger, more powerful machines on the trail?
Sarah, are you able to answer this?
I can speak generally about it. We did have preliminary conversations with our insurer, and they indicated that a reassessment would need to be done by the insurance company to determine whether or not this would increase our premiums.
Thank you, Councillor Soever.
That's, well, that's why I voted to defer, because I was hoping we could get that kind of information before we make a final decision, but, you know, it would be good to know.
Madam Clerk, I don't see anybody else. Do you have anyone?
Oh, yes. It's a popular topic. So I see CAO Wingrove, Director Schertzer, Councillor O'Leary, and then Councillor Desai has a secondary.
Okay, why don't I go with Councillor O'Leary, because maybe he will raise something that the staff can answer.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. I just wanted to comment that I think it's very telling that bridges were not evaluated in this process. I think the costs of doing the bridges, it really doesn't matter what you do with the trails. If you don't have the bridges to handle the side-by-sides, so the cost is going to be extremely more. And to Councillor Mackey's point, Sarah, I'm wondering, these side-by-sides, they're not all going in one direction. So how wide does the trail have to be for two side-by-sides to meet on the trail compared to what we have now?
Sarah?
So it's been recommended that the width move from this, what we have been widening, where we have improved the trail from 8 feet to 12 feet. And so that was that chart that was included under the second evaluation criteria question. And that was, I mean, it was a desktop exercise and a math exercise basically, but that's kind of how we determined that value per kilometer.
Okay. Kim?
The only comment that I was going to make further to the insurance is it's not only about the premiums. What we are also observing in the market is a rising incidence of the insurance companies simply refusing to write a policy. So that's the other thing that I think that we need to be conscious of. We may not be able to obtain an insurance at any price at some levels of risk. So that's why it's important for us to have those conversations with our carrier.
Thank you, Kim. And Randy?
Good morning, County Council, and just wanted to raise a couple of matters based on some of the points that have been raised. One with respect to the Bruce County, I'm not familiar with the Bruce County trails, but I would note in the report we did identify that their current trails are 3.6 meters to 4.3 meters wide. So this is wider for sure than even our average, which is 3.24 meters. So the current CP rail trail is 2.3 to 5.5 meters wide. And I think you heard this from Councillor Body that the trail width varies. And Sarah indicated that some of the trail sections we just widen, whether that's for infrastructure or there's bridges or culverts, like that was raised previously, as in terms of some of those can't be widened, as well as some steep slopes. So there's definitely some sections of the trail that are very curvy, I would say, and with that, it causes sight distance issues and sight line issues in some of those sections. So there's some sections that we're not even sure if we could even widen, even if we could explore that option of widening to 12 feet. So there may be some sections where we just have to divert around if council wants us to look at potentially allowing a wider vehicle on at least certain sections of the trail. So I just want to raise those points. And then Councillor Milne raised the points with respect to the gates. And we know there's some gates where there's some challenges and some problems where we have vehicles going around certain gates. Some gates may be a bit wider than what we would normally like in terms of our trail standards. So we're developing, as part of the RTMP recommendations, a trail standards, basically, in terms of identifying what we could look at in terms of improvements to those entrance locations. Things like putting up either fencing on either side of the gates or stones or something that would prevent access or people or vehicles going around those gates and causing then trespassing issues. So as well as Sarah noted, that trying to work with some of our police services to help increase enforcement, we want to explore that option as well. Because as been noted, there's already maybe existing issues in terms of trespassing, that's in terms of vehicles being wider than what's we currently permit on the trail. So these are some of the things that we're looking at and exploring further, and I just wanted to raise that as further information for council.
Thank you, Andy. Madam Clerk, anyone else?
Councillor Woodbury, and then, as I said, Councillor Desai has a secondary.
Thank you. Councillor Woodbury?
Thank you. I'd like to look at this from a slightly different angle, I think. To me, it's not a hard yes or no that it's going to cost us money or not right now. I think it's more of an idea of looking to the future. If the trend is to go wider to the side-by-sides, then at some point down the road, it may exclude ATVs simply because of what's on the market and out there. So my stance on it is that I don't support the motion, but it doesn't mean that we have to allow them today or invest any money today. We could work with the clubs and the various users. They can fundraise. We can look at things down the road and phase it in. And I think that we've got a great trail system through, and that it does need to be updated and modernized at times, at places. So in my opinion, to say no, I think we're actually excluding a lot of use long-term. And so I think it needs a real solid look at. We have down in our area, that's one of the big tourist things. Restaurants have deck out back and things like that because of the trail going by. And what we're seeing is more families. We're seeing couples, I'd call them older couples, but they're younger than me still, that are using it now to get out for a bit. So to me, that isn't a solid yes or no. To me, it's looking to the future. And the other question that we can address separately is at what level do we want to fund it, and at what level do we want to phase it in? So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodbury. And lastly, on now to Councillor Desai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Warden. One of the issues, I guess, Councillor Potter raised to this was the fact that, and it's not an exact quote, but the gist of it was, we do not have money for a number of social services. I strongly disagree with that. We have the money. We have been spending the money for those social services. As I said in my earlier comment, I'm not saying we do the entire $1 million project in one go. We phase it in. As such, we can dictate at what level we want to phase it in on an annual basis through our budget. So I think I respectfully disagree with Councillor Potter on that. We do not have money for other things, therefore we do not have money for this as well, because we do have money for all the social services, and we could have money for the recreational service as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desai. Okay, I think we're at the point where we're ready to call the question. And just to be clear, we are voting on the staff recommendation, which is to refuse the request to increase the width. I see you, Councillor Burley. I'll come back to you. Making a note. To refuse the request to increase the size to 65 inches and to assist interested parties in finding alternative routes. So we're going to be ready to call the question. Councillor Burley, you had something to say before we vote.
Just for the point of clarity, I'm asking for a recorded vote.
Thank you. So Madam Clerk, it's now in your hands.
My apologies. I was muted. All right. So you are voting on the staff recommendation. Councillor Mackey.
Opposed.
Councillor Burley.
In favor.
Councillor Carlton.
In favor.
Warden McQueen.
Opposed.
Councillor Desai.
Opposed.
Councillor Patterson.
In favor.
Deputy Warden Hicks.
In favor.
Councillor Clumpus.
In favor.
Councillor Kentner.
You're muted.
Councillor Kentner.
Opposed. I said opposed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Body.
In favor.
Councillor O'Leary.
In favor.
Councillor Woodbury.
Opposed.
Councillor Millen.
I will vote in favor.
Councillor Soever.
In favor.
Councillor Potter.
In favor.
Councillor Robinson.
Opposed.
Councillor Hutchinson.
In favor.
The motion is carried 60 to 27.
Thank you.
May I ask a point of procedure, if I may, Mr. Deputy Warden?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So with Chatsworth, one member is absent. Does that member's vote go automatically opposed, or is that not counted at all in a recorded vote?
Madam Clerk.
Mr. Deputy Warden, it is not counted in the vote.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on. We are, oh, sorry, staff are fine on that one. Sarah? She's gone, I'm assuming. Do we need to take a break?
Great, thank you for that. As part of this, we obviously look at upgrades to our CP Rail Trail as part of our operational budgets. So as through budget discussions, this can be something that can be looked at and explored further in terms of other future opportunities that council wants to look at. So the door is not completely shut, and of course, as Sarah noted, the club has been fantastic to work with over the years. We want to continue that strong partnership and look for maybe future opportunities to work together. And so we'll continue to explore those options and bring those forward and obviously have a further discussion with council.
Okay, so we have a couple of options here. We can take a break now, or we can push through and deal with, there are two more items that we have to deal with before we go into closed. How many people, just by sort of nodding your head up and down, how many people would like to push through? I see one nod from Councillor Burley. I see Councillor Kentner saying nod, but not many nods. How many people would like to take a break at this point? I see a few nods. You know what? If anyone needs to take a break, I think we should probably take a break. Why don't we, though, find a medium here and make it a short break? Can we come back together? It is now on my, I see 9 minutes before noon. Can we come back at noon? Are we agreeable to that?
Yeah.
Then we will recess until noon.
Just a reminder to please mute and turn your cameras off.
Thank you. Looks like we're back. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
You do have quorum.
Excellent. Mr. Warden, I see that you're still here. I want to be respectful of your role. Are you with us for good now to the end of the meeting, or will you be cutting out again?
I'll be here till 1 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Did you want to take over?
Oh, you go ahead. You're doing a great job. I like the armchair part. Gives you good practice.
All right. Then we will move on to item D, 5D. We're now dealing with the overview of a new proposed residential crossing over the CP rail trails. The motion is being moved by Councillor Desai and seconded by Councillor Carlton. Stephanie or Lacey, I don't know, or both perhaps. You have the floor.
It's Stephanie that's going to take the lead on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, County Council and Mr. Deputy Warden. Did everyone hear me? Okay. All right, so before we have an overview of a new proposed residential crossing over the CP rail trail. Next slide, please. So for illustration purposes, the county recently received a request from a private landowner to cross the CP rail trail via the laneway for residential purposes, which would ultimately result in the need for installation of utilities over and under the CP rail trail. So historically, the existing laneway crossing the CP rail trail was used for farming purposes. By changing the use of this laneway from agricultural to residential purposes, several liability and legal concerns have been brought forward. So the subject property requiring access is in Grey Highlands on the northeast side of the CP rail trail, referred as Parcel A, and it has no frontage along an open or maintained public roadway. Parcel A and B are separate legally conveyable parcels of land. A building permit has been issued to the property owner for construction on Parcel A, and construction is well underway with anticipated occupancy this December. Staff are seeking general support in principle for this proposal in order to proceed with drafting the required agreements. So what's needed? To date, a consent for easement and zoning amendment applications have already been submitted to Grey Highlands. The county requires the landowner to enter into a consent for easement agreement with the county to address matters pertaining to motor vehicle access, utility service provision, both overhead and underground, as well as emergency vehicle access. The intent and function of the proposed easement agreement will be to clearly establish through title registration where the responsibility lies for any potential legal matters that may arise along the CP rail trail. The county will also require a county facility premises use agreement with the utility companies to legally permit access to the CP rail trail for installation of the utilities, and restrictive covenants registered both against Parcel A and B to indicate no drainage from either Parcel A and B be diverted toward the CP rail trail. So what we know, this is certainly not the first instance where residential access crossing the CP rail trail has been or will be established. A fair amount of these existed prior to the county taking over ownership of the CP rail trail. There are also several farm access laneways currently that exist today for farmers to access their existing landlocked properties. With careful consideration under the Recolor Gray process, staff have incorporated a new policy under Section 8.8 speaking to rail corridors with the intent to protect the rail corridor in the event rail returns to the area. From a planning perspective, residential development on Parcel B would have been the recommended approach, as those lands have frontage on an open and maintained public roadway, and it would have limited the need to establish a new use of residential laneway and utility corridor over the CP rail trail. So going forward, because a building permit has been issued, staff are aiming to work with the municipality along with the property owner to achieve ongoing access via the CP rail trail to Parcel A,
All agreements would be approved by the Director of Planning and Director of Legal Services, the county solicitor, before they would be signed. And it is recommended that staff be directed to prepare a policy for dealing with these types of requests for crossings across the CP Rail Trail in the future. And next slide, please, just demonstrates or shows the recommendations of this report. Be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Do we have any questions? I see Councillor Milne. Go ahead, Councillor Milne.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Stephanie, you had indicated that the construction is well underway. How did this building get a building permit without having legal access to a roadway? Or was that Grey Highlands faux pas, shall we say?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Warden. Yeah, it was definitely something that county staff were made aware of after the fact. And there could have been a potential mishap in the process for issuing the building permit in this case.
Very diplomatic, Stephanie. I commend you on your answer. Nicely done. Well done. Well done. I see the mayor of Grey Highlands chuckling, so I think I suspect what went on. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Soever. Councillor Soever, you're on mute.
Yeah. So my question was going to be the same, and I think it's particularly relevant when in the discussion that we're going to have on the pulled item by Mayor Klumpus on our request for some other planning matters, because sometimes there is miscommunication, and yeah, because there seems to be two parcels here. So it seems to me that not only was there a building permit issued, but there was lot creation happening on something that did not have access to a road. So, you know, I think, you know, I just wanted to ask the same question, but it's been answered already. And so I just comment that it does seem that, you know, we do need better cooperation between the two levels of government.
Okay. Other speakers, Madam Clerk?
Councillor Desai and Warden McQueen.
Okay, Councillor Desai.
Thank you. I'm going to be the bigger person here and ignore what Councillor Milne said. My question through you, Mr. Deputy Warden, is to Stephanie on, so we're going to go ahead and create a policy around how we do this going forward. My question is, what happens when CP or when railways come back, if railways come back to Grey County? How do we deal with that easement? How do we deal with a residential laneway sort of crossing the railway lines?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Warden, that's a very good question, Councillor Desai. That's really where this policy has come from in Recolor Grey. The idea is to limit future development on those properties, to limit any potential conflict down the road. I certainly can't speak to the potential requirements that a property owner would have to go through in terms of maintaining safety, as well as you know, ensuring ongoing and continuing access to their property should rail return. And that's a big concern that we have, especially when you have, in this case, for example, they're looking to connect to natural gas as well as hydro. And so with utilities, those present additional potential concerns with a change in use in this case. So it's something that we definitely take or not take lightly, and it's something that we need to keep our eye on for sure.
Okay, Councillor McQueen. Or sorry, Warden McQueen. You're muted.
Unmute. There we are. There we are. Sorry, I get called lots of things, so don't worry. And certainly, I appreciate the comments from Councillor Millen. I would be asking the same question. I think there's a number of properties throughout Grey Highlands and maybe even Southgate and other areas, Chatsworth, where the rail line does intersect. This is like a farm. And certainly from the perspective of the young couple that are building a house, they certainly sort of got caught up in this, and all they wanted to do was build a house on their farm, and so it does raise a bigger question: is does the rail line create two separate parcels and just parking that to the side? And so I guess when this came up, and I guess inadvertently they just went and applied for a building permit, got a building permit, and then I guess all of a sudden they realized they needed to bring utilities in. I think it sort of came from the utility side going, oh, and I can't speak to the intricacies that happen in between that with staff, both our staff and Grey County staff, and also on the legal side was trying to figure out, okay, what do we do here? Anyway, long story short, there was an application to the Committee of Adjustment to create a separate right of way across the front parcel, because it's it has raised a bigger question: do these farms actually have two lots versus one big lot because of the rail line that does intersect it? But long story short, it went through the Committee of Adjustment. A right of way was created, trying to address because the house, as I understand, was quite a long way along. And so it's pretty hard to go backwards after somebody's gone that level. So anyway, this is sort of what I think through legal they worked through this, and certainly this is just securing access across it. I know other areas in the county there is agreements raised or reached to bring utilities across. I think more even in probably Dundalk and in other areas where there's agreements and all that type of thing. And certainly those encroachments have to be put in place so they don't affect, if there was a future rail line coming back, they have to make sure that they're installed and correctly is that sense. But saying that, there is also all kinds of access for agricultural accesses from the front parcel to the back too. So whether that's through a laneway. So this is something that probably has gone on as far as accessing front to back with the rail line intersecting since the rail lines went in. So it's just one of those things that we sort of got caught up in on the legal parts of things, and how and certainly with putting utilities, you want to make sure you have the agreements in place to do that. And this is moving that forward, and certainly a report moving forward for future is to address if this comes to be an issue in the future. So it's very important to address or create some policies around that as well. So thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And you were asking a question about a severance, and perhaps our lawyer, Mr. Letourneau, can answer better, but I believe it does create a natural severance for that property.
Mr. Deputy Warden, I do see Director Schertzer would provide some comments.
Okay, Randy?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Warden. And yeah, I just wanted to raise that point, is that where the rail line bisected properties in the past, it in some cases has created now two separately conveyable parcels. Obviously, in this situation, one parcel has access to an open and maintained public road, and one does not. And so that's the situation. I know there's, as the warden indicated, there's lots of properties that have been bisected by the rail line. Most of the crossings have been, for historical purposes, been to access farm fields. And it definitely changes the nature when you go from a farm field access to a residential access, because as Stephanie noted in her report, you're getting then into infrastructure and utility crossings either over or under the trail. And then that raises then implications if rail were to ever return to the area. What does that mean? So that's exactly the whole reasons why we're recommending and suggesting we bring back a policy and a report for how we deal with these matters on a go-forward basis. Obviously, we recognize mistakes are made. And we're wanting to work with Grey Highlands and this property owner to try to rectify this particular issue while protecting the interests of the county. But in a go-forward basis, we want to establish a policy framework that would be supported then obviously by council in terms of how we would deal with these situations on a go-forward basis.
Thank you, Randy. So I think we're ready to call the question, Dave. Staff proposal is that the residential crossing be supported in principle, that bylaws be prepared, and that staff would be directed to bring back policy for future consideration. So I call the question, is there anyone opposed? I see none. I'm going to say that that is carried. Okay. I think we wanted to deal with, Madam Clerk, help me out. There was something we wanted to deal with prior to, the Provincial Offences Court update audio hearing.
Actually, we need to go back to item H on the consent agenda that Councillor Klumpus pulled. So we'll need it moved and seconded to put it on the floor for discussion.
Excellent. Thank you for reminding me about that. So that's right. That's the correspondence from the town of Blue Mountains. I'm going to say moved by Councillor Klumpus, seconded by Warden McQueen.
I'll second.
I've got Warden McQueen. His hand was up. So Councillor Klumpus, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Deputy Warden. I just wanted to bring this forward to say that I do support this in principle and appreciate that the request has been for delegated authority is rather limited in scope. But I'm just wondering if this is an opportunity because a report has been requested of staff to come forward that this kind of thing might be applicable to other lower tiers as well. And I'm just wondering if this is an opportunity perhaps to really look at planning at the lower tier and planning at the upper tier, and through communication and collaboration, look for areas where there may be some duplications or there may be some efficiencies that might be found. With that in mind, in this report that Randy will be, staff will be bringing back, to begin with, I'm just wondering if staff could give us some idea of what thoughts along that line might be included in that staff report.
Who will speak to this?
I can speak to this, Deputy Warden, and thank you for the question. I think in terms of the initial report, although the report would focus on the request from Town of Blue Mountains, the process and framework that would be identified in the staff report for potentially delegating certain approvals could then be utilized by other local municipalities should they wish to take on certain approvals. We know that Simcoe County has delegated approvals for plans of subdivisions and condominiums to the majority of their local municipalities. And so we've already reached out to them just to get some preliminary information. Simcoe has delegated the approvals in a phased approach over the past 20 years. And Simcoe staff noted that any potential staff time savings resulting from delegated approvals has allowed them to focus their time on strategic and long-term planning projects and initiatives that benefit the county as a whole. So this is some of the things that we're wanting to, I guess, explore further in the staff report. We know that there's different planning models out there. Wellington County has delegated certain approvals to some municipalities where other municipalities, they provide all the planning services. And we know neighbors to our west in Bruce County provide all the planning services to the local municipalities. So you can see there are various planning models, and we were going to explore some of those in further detail, provide that in the staff report as background information. So we're hoping to address some of those matters I think that Councillor Klumpus is pointing to. We're also meeting with local municipal planners next week, so we can add this as an agenda item for that, for some further discussion with the local planners group. And then we'd be happy to bring back that information in a staff report for council to consider.
Thank you, Randy. Councillor Klumpus, anything else?
No, that's very good. Thank you for that information. I appreciate it.
Very good. Councillor Soever, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden. So the reason for this request, as you can see, it was approved by council, is to really create some efficiencies in the planning process. When there is an approval of subdivision or condo, that goes with it most times, almost all the time, a zoning bylaw amendment that has to go on at the local level. So what we have is, our council deliberating, we have the county council deliberating, we have two planning staffs working on essentially the same file. And certainly that's not efficient. Now, although not directly relevant, because we are only asking for a limited amount of authorities at this time to be delegated, and to see how that works initially anyway. What happens is in the case of the Gibraltar pit, our council actually did not make a decision in time and actually ended up opposing what the county had already approved. And we found ourselves being in an LPAT, which we subsequently negotiated our way out of at the local level and got concessions from the proponent, which satisfied the members of the community. So in situations like that, we'd hate to be in a situation where our refusal of a zoning bylaw amendment and the county's approval of a plan of subdivision are at odds and result on us being on separate sides in an LPAT with legal costs on both sides. So I think that's really the genesis of this. I'd like to also point out that, we'll wait for the report, but Owen Sound does take care of its own plan, being, the heart of Grey County, and probably planning decisions taken in Owen Sound have much more effect on a larger area of Grey County than planning decisions here in the northeast corner. Then, that hasn't caused any issues to date. So I think it's a worthwhile initiative, and I'm very pleased to see Mayor Klumpus and Meaford are interested as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Silver. I don't see any other hands, so perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, Director Schertzer would like to provide some follow-up.
Randy?
Yeah, just a bit of clarification just on the, so County Council does have the ability to delegate certain approvals, and we can highlight that in the staff report in terms of what approvals can be delegated. However, there are certain approvals that cannot be delegated, such as approvals for county official plan amendments, approvals of local official plans, and local official plan amendments in accordance with the Planning Act. So I just wanted to highlight that just because the example of the Gibraltar pit, that was a county official plan amendment that can't be delegated by county council. That has to remain as the approval for the county. So in some cases, we work with some local municipalities because the Planning Act does require the county to have a county official plan, whereas local official plans are optional. So we've worked with some municipalities to, because our county official plan provides obviously policies for the entire county, we don't have a lot of detail with respect to our settlement areas in our official plan because we want to provide that flexibility for local municipalities. So in some cases, some municipalities have focused their local official plans in their settlement areas and have left the rural and agricultural areas up to the county official plan. So this is one example of where you could look at creating some further efficiencies by only in some cases requiring county official plan amendments in your rural and agricultural areas and focusing on the local policies in where we're experiencing a majority of our growth and development from a building perspective. So these are some of the things that we can flesh out further, obviously, in the staff report, and we'll bring some of those discussions back to see where some further efficiencies can be found.
Okay, thank you, Randy. I see Brian Mill. Yeah.
Just a quick question to Randy, if I might. Randy, would the report also talk about the financial implications as well as the planning implications for the two layers of government?
Yeah, well, we can try to address that to some degree. It'd be obviously a pretty, we would have to dig into a lot further if council wanted to look at, what's currently spent both at the county level and local level on planning related matters. That would be a more robust report. If council is wanting that level of detail, we can try to work with our local municipal partners and bring some of that information forward. We were going to look at, obviously, if we were to delegate some of the approvals that are being requested by Blue Mountains, we were going to provide, obviously, some staff time estimates in terms of potential savings of staff time. Just on that, we think that it's because we're delegated by the province for municipal plan review, staff would still need to review some of the plans and subdivisions like we do right now for the City of Owen Sound. We review and provide comments to the city on those plans and subdivision applications, especially where there's in close proximity to county roads. Because in some cases we require additional lands or daylight triangles associated with those. So there would still be staff review for those applications. So we still need to review all the various studies and provide comments. But there may be some administrative savings on the actual approval side of that process. And we've already delegated some certain tasks, like delegation of public meetings to local municipalities for plans of sub-condos, because we were finding it was challenging to schedule county council and local council at the same time. And as Council Suever, there usually is an accompanying local application with a subdivision. So with this, county staff still attend those public meetings and to obviously listen to the dialogue, but we've delegated some of those tasks already to provide some of those efficiencies. So these are things we can definitely highlight in the report. And also look for other opportunities to provide efficiencies, which we always try to look for. And like I said, we're meeting with local planners next week, so we can maybe explore some of those opportunities further.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate all that. I just, and I look forward to the report, but I just wonder if this is a case of be careful what you're asking for. But anyway, we shall see. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Okay, I think we're ready to call the question. So on the motion, sorry?
Mr. Deputy Warden, I just wonder, the resolution is very specific to delegated authority with the town of Blue Mountains and some specific items. And council has discussed the broadening perhaps of that staff report. So I wondered if an amendment for council's consideration that an additional clause be added that the staff report also include a review of current planning processes county-wide and the exploration of other options which may identify further efficiencies within the overall planning process. And I just put that out for council's consideration so that the report coming back to you is fulsome in nature.
And I suppose, Madam Clerk, that if we're doing that, expanding it, we might as well add Councillor Milne's suggestion about cost.
We could certainly add the cost to that.
And is it appropriate that we do that at this time?
Yes, we can add, it hasn't been moved or seconded, so we could certainly add further efficiencies within the overall planning process and the costs associated with those.
Okay, and Councillor Klumpus, are you content with that amendment?
Yes, absolutely. That was my original intent, and I appreciate the clerk and Randy working with me on that. So thank you. Yes.
Thank you, then. And who was our seconder? I'm forgetting now.
So it was Warden McQueen on the original, and we are just voting on the amendment, and then we'll vote on the main motion as amended.
Okay. So the amendment will then be moved by Councillor Klumpus and seconded by, I guess, Councillor Kentner, because I see him waving his hand. Okay, are we ready to vote on the amendment, which is expanding the recommendations? Is there anyone opposed to the amendment? I don't see any, Madam Clerk. I'm going to say that that is carried. And now on the main motion, which is to receive and for a staff report to be brought forward. Is there anyone opposed to that? I don't see any. That too is carried. Thank you very much. We are now going to move.
Kim has, I'm sorry, Mr. Deputy Warden, CAO Wingrove has a quick comment, I think.
Just one more item, Council. I will add this to our priority setting plan and discussion on the 15th. And at that time, we can determine the timeline for getting this report back to you. Okay, thanks.
Just one more thing to do, huh, Kim?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to suggest, and I'm looking for, I guess, unanimous consent that we move item 7, other business, the Provincial Offences Court update audio hearing, move it up to now prior to us going into closed session so that it can be heard now and not have to wait until we come out of closed session. Is there anyone opposed to that? I see no one being opposed. So we can go ahead with item number 7 then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's my pleasure to have Amanda Kokas, our Provincial Offences Court Manager, with us this morning. As you're likely aware, our Provincial Offences Courts have been closed since the beginning of the pandemic. And as you can appreciate, that's caused an awful lot of matters to really back up in the system. And Amanda and her team and some of the IT staff at the county have worked on a really innovative solution. And I really wanted Amanda to have a minute with you just to explain what they've done and let you know how things are moving forward here. Go ahead, Amanda. Thanks.
Thanks, Kim, and thank you, Deputy Warden. Yes, we've had some very exciting time in POA the last couple of months. The province has changed legislation that has allowed us to increase our technology both inside the courtroom and in our administration. They also allowed each court to decide whether they wanted to move forward with audio court or whether they wanted to wait until in-person matters were back. We decided to be one of the very few courts in the whole province that decided to move forward. And by engaging with our local police agencies, our judiciary, our IT staff, our prosecution department, and our own staff, we were able to come up with a very cool technology that uses the Zoom platform and integrated into our court recording system, which was the main priority, that we have to keep our court recording system intact. So our IT department was able to link Zoom into our system, which allows the justice of the peace to phone in, all the defendants to phone in. They sit into a virtual waiting room and they're allowed to be brought into the courtroom one at a time and have their matters dealt with. So we've received some great feedback. We've had 3 successful courts so far. We actually had the Regional Senior Justice of the Peace preside over one of them. He provided us great feedback. He was so impressed by the technology, by the scheduling, all aspects of it. And he was going to take those comments back to the province and share how great of a process that Grey and Bruce courts have come up with. So I'm very thankful for staff and the IT department and everybody for coming up with the solution. And I think this is just the beginning of the technology side of things that, you know, POA Court has to offer. And I'm hoping that we can continue to move forward and embrace all these different changes.
Thank you, Amanda. That's fantastic news. And I see the makings for another Toronto Star article for Grey County. That's excellent. Councillors, any questions or comments?
Amanda, how many matters have you heard?
So we've heard over 200 matters within the last 3 days, and we continue to have a number of matters dealt with. So we have scheduled audio court for the rest of the year. So we're hoping, we have over 1,000 trials that are sitting waiting to be heard. So we're hoping that this is going to help deal with some of the backlog and we can get some of these matters dealt with.
Thank you, Councillor Soever.
Well, that was my question. How many do we have in the backlog? Because I know our officers here have issued a lot of tickets and things, and just wondering when the backlog might be cleared.
Right. So yes, we do have over 1,000 trials sitting waiting to be scheduled. That's just for Part 1 trials. We have over 800 Part 3 trials sitting waiting to be dealt with as well. So we are continuing to book as many as possible. The defendants also have to be willing to meet with our prosecution or our Crown to come to resolutions, because as of right now, we aren't proceeding with trials. It's only matters that are resolved, pretrial matters or something that's being withdrawn. We do have a huge backlog, but we are hoping that we should be able to clear the backlog by the end of December with no issues.
So Amanda, how are we dealing with Jordan cases, which is about delay in the context of COVID?
Well, I could probably ask, there was a new case that was just heard in the appeal court. I'm not sure Michael Eterno's there, if he could speak to it. I don't know the full logistics of it, but that issue was dealt with just recently, I believe last week in the appeal court.
Michael, anything to add?
Is he not here?
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Not seeing, am I not seeing? There I am. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, our prosecutors. Thank you, Deputy Warden. Our prosecutors are tracking Jordan issues and working to keep all matters moving ahead as judiciously as possible to fulfill the prosecution's obligations under Jordan, and working as best we can under the circumstances of what's able to be accomplished in court at this time. And I would just echo that Amanda and her team have worked incredibly hard and have been very helpful to prosecution staff in trying to move matters forward, because we're sensitive to the backup on the Part 1 side as well. So the more we can do to move the backlog forward, the better.
Excellent. Thank you, Michael. And thank you, Amanda. That's terrific news. It's great to see that Grey County is in a position of being a model for the province. Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think we are ready for the motion to go into closed session. That is moved by Councillor Hutchison and seconded by Councillor Potter. Anyone opposed? Then that's carried. So we'll take us.
So the staff remaining,
Right.
Deputy Warden, will be Kim, myself, Kevin Wepler, Rob Hatton. So Rob will let us know
When everyone else is out.
Yes.
Thank you.